The roar of battle echoed through the vast emptiness of space as the ardent fury, humanity's flagship, sliced through the void, evading the deadly fire of a Zenthar dreadnought. Massive energy blasts, bright as stars, exploded around the ship, shaking its hull. But Captain Elena Vasquez remained steady at the helm. Her crew, a mix of hardened veterans and young recruits, fought beside her in silence, their focus sharp, their lives hanging by a thread. "Shields at 20%, yelled the communications officer, barely audible over the thrum of alarms. Elena gripped the controls with iron determination. "Hold steady, people. If we can take down their command ship, we cripple their fleet. I know we can do this." Outside the ship, the Zenthar dreadnought loomed like a giant metal leviathan, its weapons firing in synchronized waves. But the ardent fury wasn't just any starship, it was humanity's last hope. Equipped with experimental stealth technology, it slid between the enemy's barrage, only to reappear for brief moments to fire a devastating pulse shot, striking critical points on the enemy's armor. The battle raged on, the tide of war hanging in the balance. Humanity's future depended on this one moment, a daring strike against an alien empire that thought itself invincible. The galaxy had been at war for over a century, from the cold expanse of the Zernash Expanse in the north to the bustling trade hubs of the Torian cluster in the south. Every star system felt the tremors of conflict. Warring factions, each with its own philosophy, technology, and ambition, had drawn their lines in the sand, and humanity found itself fighting for survival in a universe that had once seemed vast and boundless, but now felt suffocating. The Zenthar, empire, an ancient and technologically superior alien race, had declared its intentions to dominate the galaxy. Their ships were colossal, their weapons powerful beyond anything humanity had ever conceived, and their battle strategies flawless. For decades, they swept across the galaxy, conquering world after world, crushing resistance with brutal efficiency. Their society, built on rigid hierarchies and a deep sense of superiority, dismissed humans as primitive and disorganized, a species unworthy of any serious challenge. But they had underestimated humanity's capacity for ingenuity and sheer will to survive. The Zenthar had invaded Earth's colonies at the edge of known space with devastating speed, and for a time, it seemed that humanity's fate was sealed. Their Revenant-class dreadnoughts, with their formidable particle cannons and energy shields, cut through human defenses like a hot knife through butter. The Zenthar Conqueror, an ancient warship bristling with destructive power, was thought to be unstoppable. The Empire's tactics were as efficient as they were merciless, and human resistance was initially scattered and ill-prepared. Yet as the Zenthar pushed deeper into human space, something unexpected happened. The Alliance of Free Systems, a coalition of human factions that had once struggled to work together, began to show signs of unity. What they lacked in sheer firepower, they made up for with unorthodox thinking, quick adaptability, and a fierce resolve to protect their homes. Despite their technologically inferior starships, the humans learned to fight on their terms, using unconventional tactics and cunning strategies to turn the tide in key battles. One of humanity's greatest strengths was their ingenuity. Over the years, they reverse-engineered Zenthar technology, incorporating elements of their devastating energy weapons and warp drives into their own fleets. Experimental ships like the Ardent Fury were built using hybrid technologies, human engineering mixed with stolen alien designs. These ships weren't just about firepower, they were about flexibility, adapting in the heat of battle to the unpredictable and ever-changing nature of war. Captain Elena Vasquez, commander of the Ardent Fury, was one of the brightest minds to emerge from this conflict. A former scientist turned military leader, Elena had once worked on theoretical propulsion systems, and now she was testing them in the heart of battle. Her starship was equipped with an experimental cloaking device, a technology stolen from the Zenthar, allowing her to slip through enemy lines undetected before striking with devastating precision. While the Zenthar were technologically advanced, they were often rigid in their thinking, believing their superiority would ensure victory. Humans, on the other hand, thrived in chaos, adapted quickly, and fought with a tenacity that could never be fully predicted. The galaxy was not just a battlefield of ships and weapons. It was a theater of ideological warfare, where civilizations clashed not only with weapons, but with their very philosophies. The Zenthar, in their arrogance, believed in a world of order, a world where each being knew their place and strength was achieved through dominance. The humans, however, embodied the opposite. They believed in the potential of the individual, in the power of collective action, and in the resilience of spirit, no matter the odds. In the vast galactic's nexus, a sprawling network of interstellar trade routes and diplomatic enclaves, humanity's resistance began to find more than just strategic allies. They forged unlikely partnerships with other alien races, outcasts, refugees, and survivors who had been similarly oppressed by the Zenthar. One such race, the Yavrim, a peaceful species of telepathic beings, shared their knowledge of psychic warfare with the humans. Another, the Kuroks, a nomadic species of technologists, offered them the secret to their powerful energy shields, which would prove crucial in humanity's battle to stay alive. But the greatest revelation came from within. Humans had something the Zenthar couldn't understand: empathy. In the heart of war, humanity began to form bonds with those they had once considered enemies. They showed compassion to alien creatures in need, offering refuge to those who had been abandoned by the Zenthar, and through these alliances, they gained intelligence and technology that would help them stand toe-to-toe with the Empire. It was a war that had brought humanity to the brink of extinction, but in the midst of destruction, something remarkable happened. Humanity's resilience began to shine through. The belief in the ability to adapt, learn, and overcome obstacles that were insurmountable to others had become their greatest weapon. The Zenthar had thought they could crush humanity's spirit, but they had underestimated the depths of the human will. Now, as the war reached its tipping point, the Ardent Fury and its crew were preparing for their most daring mission yet. A final assault against the Zenthar's flagship, the Zorathar, in a desperate bid to cripple the Empire and turn the tide of war in humanity's favor. But the Zenthar had already begun to fear what they had once dismissed as insignificant: humanity's ability to surprise, adapt, and ultimately overcome. The war had entered its darkest phase. While the Zenthar Empire had once been invincible, in their overwhelming power, humanity's survival instincts were slowly but surely beginning to alter the galaxy's balance. What had started as a desperate defense against the invincible empire had transformed into a full-scale galaxy-spanning rebellion. Yet, as human ingenuity and resilience began to make inroads, the Zenthar realized they had severely miscalculated the depth of humanity's resourcefulness. At the front lines of this escalating conflict was Captain Elena Vasquez, commander of the Ardent Fury, the experimental human starship that had become a symbol of humanity's resolve. The ship itself was a testament to human adaptability. Built from a mishmash of alien technology, reverse-engineered Zenthar systems, and pure human innovation, the Ardent Fury was equipped with a prototype phase shifter, a cloaking system, that allowed the ship to become invisible to enemy sensors for brief periods, a perfect tool for ambushing the Zenthar fleets. Elena stood on the command deck of her ship, the familiar hum of its hybrid engines vibrating through the soles of her boots. Her first officer, Lieutenant Colin Harris, was at his station, his fingers dancing over a holographic console, coordinating with the fleet of human vessels now deployed in an effort to push back the Zenthar forces. The viewports displayed the beautiful but deadly expanse of the Kaldon Nebula, an area of space where the Zenthar had recently set up a blockade to choke off human supply routes. The nebula was alive with ion storms, a perilous region where even the most advanced sensors struggled to penetrate. It was the perfect place for humanity to strike. The Zenthar, however, had adapted quickly. Their fleets were as formidable as ever, their Revenant-class dreadnoughts sweeping across human lines with ruthless precision. Their advanced sensors were designed to pierce through even the most advanced cloaking technology. As Elena's fleet entered the nebula, the Zenthar prepared to meet them head-on. "Prepare the phase shifter, Lieutenant," Elena commanded, her voice calm but her mind sharp. The phase shifter was an untested technology, capable of turning their ship invisible for only a few minutes at most. The last thing they needed was to be caught by the Zenthar while cloaked. Harris nodded, setting the controls. "Ready, Captain. But once we engage, we'll have to keep moving. We can't afford to be caught in one place too long." The Zenthar ships are adapted for more than just firepower. They have scanners that can detect even the slightest disturbances in space. "I know," Elena replied, her gaze focused on the shimmering nebula outside the viewport. "We'll use the chaos of the nebula itself as cover. We'll strike fast, disrupt their formations, and leave before they can retaliate." As the fleet entered the dense ion clouds, the Zenthar flagship, the Zorathar, appeared on their scanners. A massive dreadnought bristling with energy weaponry and a gravity well generator capable of pulling ships out of warp. It was the heart of the Zenthar blockade. Human strategy had evolved, and their new tactics reflected this. They were no longer relying on sheer brute force. Instead, they had begun to implement guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run operations that played to their strengths: mobility, stealth, and adaptability. The Ardent Fury would lead the charge, disappearing into the nebula's chaos and striking at key Zenthar vessels from unexpected angles. Meanwhile, the rest of the fleet would strike from different directions, creating a diversion that would force the Zenthar into disarray. The plan had been set, and now it was time to execute it. Elena's fingers gripped the armrest of her command chair as she gave the order to engage. A low hum vibrated through the ship as the phase shifter powered up. The Ardent Fury shimmered for a brief moment before disappearing from all external sensors. With a subtle lurch, the ship surged forward, moving toward the heart of the Zenthar formation. But the Zenthar were not as blind as they once were. "Captain, their lead ship is deploying a scrambler net," Harris reported, his voice tense. "It's a modified energy shield designed to disrupt cloaking devices." "Activate the countermeasures," Elena ordered. "Give us 20 seconds. The ship's hull rippled as the phase shifter began to destabilize, but it held for now. As the Ardent Fury glided toward the Zenthar formation, Elena couldn't help but admire their ingenuity. The scrambler net was an adaptation of their energy weaponry, and while it hadn't been a perfect countermeasure, it had forced humanity to shift tactics once again. "Target the ship's engines and weapons systems, Lieutenant," Elena commanded. "We'll go for their propulsion and fire control systems." "Firing solution locked," Harris replied. A moment later, the Ardent Fury erupted in a flash of energy as it launched a series of EMP missiles, designed to disable the Zenthar ship's internal systems. The missiles hit their target, and for a brief moment, the Zenthar ship's shields flickered. It was enough for a second strike. Elena's fleet, now flanking the Zenthar formation from multiple angles, unleashed a barrage of energy weapons. The Revenant-class dreadnought took a devastating blow, but the Zenthar responded quickly. "We've got incoming," Harris said, his voice tight. "Zenthar reinforcements, 3 destroyers closing fast." The Zenthar had learned. They were no longer content with brute force. They were now anticipating humanity's unconventional strategies and were countering them with their own brilliant tactics. The engagement quickly escalated into a brutal high-stakes battle. "Evasive maneuvers now," Elena barked as the ship jolted under a heavy barrage. The Ardent Fury weaved through the ion storms, relying on her advanced systems to stay ahead of the Zenthar's targeting. Target their engines, disable them, keep them from regrouping. Human ingenuity had led to the development of several innovative strategies over the past year, and one of the most effective was the use of hacked Zenthar drones. These machines, once part of the Zenthar Empire's automated fleets, had been captured by human forces and reprogrammed. Deployed in the heat of battle, these drones provided crucial intelligence and disrupted Zenthar formations. The Zenthar, once confident in their overwhelming superiority, now found themselves fighting a battle they hadn't prepared for. One of unpredictability and clever tricks, not just raw firepower. Every time they thought they had gained the upper hand, the humans would adapt, using new tactics and weapons they hadn't seen before. Despite the initial successes, the battle was far from over. Elena's fleet had inflicted serious damage on the Zenthar flagship, but they had paid a heavy price. Several human ships had been disabled, their crews evacuated just in time. The Zenthar fleet was regrouping, their larger ships preparing to launch a counterattack that could cripple humanity's offensive. "Elena, we've got to pull back," Harris said, scanning the sensor readouts. "The Zenthar are calling in reinforcements. We've overstayed our welcome here." Elena's eyes narrowed. "Not yet. We've shaken them, but we need more time. If we retreat now, we'll lose the initiative. We fight to the last ship." The next few moments unfolded in a blur of desperate action. As the Zenthar advanced, Elena's tactics shifted once more. They had no choice but to engage in a battle of attrition, striking when they could, retreating when necessary, and using every weapon at their disposal. The humans had started the conflict with an enormous disadvantage, but they had turned it into their greatest advantage: their adaptability, their ability to innovate in the heat of battle, and their refusal to give up. Despite their efforts, the Zenthar weren't done. The true scale of the threat humanity faced became clearer with each passing minute. But as the battle raged on, it became clear that the humans, for all their disadvantages, were learning to exploit every weakness in their enemies, no matter how strong or technologically advanced the Zenthar thought they were. The ardent fury was on the edge of collapse. Her hull, once pristine and gleaming, was now scarred with the black streaks of battle. System failures blinked across every monitor, and the hum of the engines was erratic, sputtering as if they too were on the brink of giving up. Captain Elena Vasquez stood resolute on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the holographic display before her. The Zenthar flagship Zorathar loomed large, its sleek, terrifying silhouette a beacon of alien dominance. But the battle wasn't over yet, and neither was humanity's fight for survival. "We've taken heavy damage, Captain," Lieutenant Colin Harris said, his voice strained but steady. "We're down to 20% operational capacity. The phase shifter is offline. If we don't make this count, we won't make it out of here." Elena's mind raced. The Zenthar had sent everything they had: reinforcements, orbital platforms, and the full might of their dreadnoughts. Humanity's fleet had been reduced to a handful of scattered ships, but the ardent fury had one ace left up its sleeve: the Omega Core. It was an experimental weapon, a device capable of releasing an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to disable every ship in a 100-mile radius, rendering them vulnerable to a follow-up strike. It was their last, desperate chance. But activating the Omega Core wasn't without consequences. It required a full power drain, leaving the ship defenseless for a critical period. The Zenthar had already proven their ruthlessness in battle. Elena's decision was clear, but the risk was unimaginable. She turned toward Harris. "Prepare the Omega Core. We're going to end this." "Aye, Captain." Harris's voice was resolute, but Elena could see the tension in his eyes. He knew the stakes. The countdown began. 30 seconds, Harris called out. Elena's pulse quickened, but she didn't show it. She was a leader now, focused only on the mission. "Lieutenant, what's the status of the Zenthar foe forces?" His hologram flickered as Harris updated the tactical overlay. "Their remaining ships are moving into position. The Zorathar is taking point. If we strike now, we can disable their A fleet and cripple their flagship before it can retaliate. But Captain, the Omega Core will drain our reserves. We won't be able to sustain any follow-up co-combat." Lena nodded, her jaw set in determination. "We fight to the last breath. It's all or nothing now. Prepare for Phase 2.2. The Omega Core would drain all of their power, shutting down everything except the bare minimum life support systems. It would leave them vulnerable for a critical moment, but if they succeeded, it would turn the tide of the war." The countdown reached 10 seconds. "Prepare for final engagement," Elena commanded, her eyes scanning the looming Zorathar. This was it. The battle for humanity's survival would unfold in the next few minutes. 5 seconds, Harris said, activating the Omega Core. His ship lurched as all power was rerouted to the core, leaving the ardent fury exposed to the oncoming Zenthar attack. The countdown clock in Elena's mind ticked away as she watched the Zenthar fleet moving into position, unaware of the trap being set for them. With a final bone-chilling hum, the Omega Core activated. A shockwave of raw, devastating energy rippled out from the ardent fury, lighting up the darkened space around them. For a brief moment, every Zenthar ship, including the Zorathar, faltered. Their advanced energy shields flickered and died. Their weapons systems sputtered and went offline, and their once precise navigation systems became a chaotic mess of malfunctioning data. The Zenthar had no idea what hit them. "And now," Lena shouted. Without waiting for confirmation, the ardent fury's remaining weapon systems powered up. Elena had just enough time to fire off a direct hit to the Zorathar's command center. The Zorathar's defenses were non-existent, and the blast struck true, sending a shockwave through the flagship's hull. The flagship began to list, its once pristine silhouette now crumpling under the assault. "See, Captain," Eris shouted as the Zorathar's reactor went critical. "They've activated their self-destruct sequence. We need to pull back." But it was too late. The shockwave from the Omega Core had left the ardent fury disabled as well. Her weapons were offline, engines sputtering, and shields failing. The Zorathar was on a collision course with the human vessel, its self-destruct countdown ticking down rapidly. Elena's face was a mask of determination, but inside, her heart raced. "We need to leave now," Eris screamed. "Not yet," Elena replied firmly. "We finished this." Zorathar exploded in a catastrophic blaze of light. The explosion was so powerful that it sent shockwaves across the entire battle theater, damaging or destroying anything within range, Zenthar and human ships alike. The remains of the Zenthar flagship were scattered across the nebula, drifting in all directions as debris rained down upon the remaining Zenthar fleet. But humanity wasn't unscathed. The ardent fury was heavily damaged, her once sturdy frame now torn open in multiple places. Several crew members had already been evacuated to the remaining functional ships, but the ardent fury was now a floating husk, drifting in the aftermath of the battle. "Status report," Elena ordered, voice hoarse but commanding. "Shields are offline, engines are critical. We have full hull breaches on decks 5 and 7, Harris reported, his voice strained. "Captain, we've taken catastrophic damage. We won't survive much longer." Lena gazed out at the wreckage, her mind working through the calculations. They had done it. The Zenthar flagship was destroyed and the remaining fleet was in disarray. But at what cost? Was it worth the sacrifice? The answer was simple. Humanity had won, but only just. "Elena, we've done it," Harris whispered, looking out at the battle's aftermath. For a moment, Elena allowed herself a fleeting sense of triumph. Humanity had dealt a devastating blow to the Zenthar Empire. Their most powerful weapon, their flagship, was gone. But victory came at a price, and they were no closer to finding peace than they had been before the war began. "Take us to the nearest human-controlled sector," Elena ordered. "We need to regroup. This fight is far from over." As the ship limped away from the battlefield, Elena stared out into the blackness of space. Humanity had survived, but the true cost of their victory was only beginning to sink in. The Zenthar would return, and humanity would be ready. But this was only the beginning. The aftermath of the battle left the galaxy in a fragile balance. The ardent fury, though crippled, had survived, and the wreckage of the Zenthar fleet was scattered across the stars. But the price of victory had been steep. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the command deck, her face etched with the exhaustion of the last few hours. The battle had been won, but it felt more like a temporary reprieve than a lasting triumph. The war was far from over. "Captain, we've managed to make it to the outer rim of the Alliance sector," Lieutenant Colin Harris reported, his voice steady but strained. "We've sent out distress signals. Several fleet vessels are on their way to assist." Lena nodded, her thoughts still fixed on the last moments of the battle. The Omega Core had worked, perhaps too well. The Zenthar flagship had been obliterated, but the ship's final act of self-destruction had taken a toll on the ardent fury and the remaining human forces. The fleet was shattered, and the survivors had limped away, their path forward uncertain. "How many ships did we lose, Lieutenant?" Lena asked, her voice quiet, betraying the weight of the question. Harris hesitated. We've lost 6 major ships, Captain. The fleet's morale is shattered and we're limping along with only a handful of vessels, but I've inflicted significant damage to the Zenthar. They've lost their flagship and their central command is in disarray. How long until we can fully repair the ardent Fury? Lena asked, eyes scanning the broken hull outside the viewport. We've got emergency repairs underway, but we'll need full access to a human-controlled shipyard for any meaningful restoration, Harris replied. That'll take weeks, maybe longer. Lena stared out at the debris field, her mind racing. The victory felt hollow, but it was the only one they had. The Zenthar were wounded, but not defeated. They were a force of nature, relentless and seemingly unbreakable. The loss of their flagship would be a blow to their morale, but it wouldn't stop them from coming back. We need to move fast, Elena said, her voice firm. While the Zenthar regroup, we prepare. We've got a chance to strike again. The galaxy is watching, and if humanity wants to survive, we must show them what we're capable of. We'll rebuild, we'll regroup, and we'll fight on our terms. He thought of rebuilding was daunting. Humanity had been pushed to the brink of extinction. The Ardent Fury was just one ship, and the crew had already faced more than they should have had to endure. Elena could feel the exhaustion in every bone of her body, the burden of command heavier than ever. But there was no time for doubt. Not now. The fight for humanity's future had only just begun. Days passed, and the Ardent Fury limped toward the nearest human-controlled sector. The crew worked tirelessly to make temporary repairs, but there was little they could do without the proper facilities. Elena spent her time overseeing operations, coordinating with the fleet, and trying to keep the remnants of humanity's forces together. The Zenthar had not pursued them immediately, but Elena knew that it was only a matter of time before they regrouped and launched another offensive. As they neared the Alliance fleet's position, a transmission came through. The face of Admiral Sarah O'Neill, a seasoned veteran and one of humanity's last remaining leaders, appeared on the holoscreen. "Elena, it's good to see you've made it," O'Neill said, her expression a mixture of relief and concern. "The damage is worse than we anticipated. How many ships did we lose?" Lena took a deep breath. 6 major ships, including the Spectre and the Valor, but we inflicted serious damage to the Zenthar fleet. Their flagship is gone. The balance of power has shifted, but we've got a long way to go. Neil nodded. "You've done more than we could have hoped for. The rest of the fleet is on standby, and we've got several bases under repair. We'll need to consolidate our forces and start planning our next move." Lena's gaze shifted to the crew behind her, each face a reflection of the sacrifices they had made. They had endured losses, battles, and uncertainty, but they had survived. And as the remnants of humanity's fleet began to gather in the Alliance sector, Elena knew that they had proven one thing: humanity was not easily broken. In the days that followed, the fleet began to rebuild. New alliances were forged between humans and other species, those who had witnessed humanity's resilience and ingenuity in battle. The Zenthar were reeling from their losses, but their war machine was far from defeated. They had suffered a blow, but they would recover, as would humanity. The war had changed the galaxy in ways that were still unfolding, but there was no denying the shift in momentum. Humanity had earned the respect of the galaxy's most powerful empires. They had shown that, against all odds, they could stand toe-to-toe with the greatest forces in the known universe and survive. Elena walked through the wreckage of the Ardent Fury, her footsteps heavy with the weight of the journey ahead. The fight was far from over, but humanity had proven its place in the stars. As the repairs began, Elena found herself looking toward the future with a new resolve. The Zenthar would return, no doubt, but humanity had something they didn't: the will to survive, the creativity to innovate, and the unity to face whatever came next. And for the first time in a long while, Elena felt a spark of hope. "We're not done yet," she whispered to herself, looking out at the stars. "This is just the beginning."